Well, the fifth biggest party, the Freedom Front Plus, is launching its manifesto today in Pretoria. Well, the party hopes to improve its representation in Parliament after a good performance in the 2019 national elections. SABC News anchor Sakina Kamwendo joins us now live from Pretoria. Sakina, a very good morning to you. Thanks indeed for your time. You've been with us throughout the morning. Certainly the Freedom Front Plus wanting to make a further dent in the elections that will be upcoming in May and increase its support. All right, we do apologise for that. Sakina Kamwendo coming to us live from the Freedom Front Plus manifesto launch there. Of course, looking to the elections that will be coming up later this year, of course, in May. Political parties obviously going out to woo potential voters who they're hoping will put their X next to their political party. Remember, of course, the Freedom Front Plus taking much of the electorate or voters from the Democratic Alliance, and certainly one would want to imagine what it will tell South Africans today to try and convince them to vote for it in the next coming election. Let's go back to Sakina Kamwendo now. She is live to us from Pretoria.
Right, welcome back. Not sure where you guys lost us, but we are at Heartfelt Arena in Pretoria, the nation's capital, of course. And I was just talking about the big five political parties as per representation in Parliament. And that, of course, includes the Freedom Front Plus. And this is the fourth of the five special broadcasts that we will be bringing you from the five top represented political parties in Parliament. The Freedom Front Plus, of course, bringing us back to Pretoria. And I must just say, if you think you knew what the Freedom Front Plus was about, think again, because it seems as though there's something happening here, and we were talking about it off air, Mzwaimbete and Dr. Ranesh Doraj. Something is moving that perhaps we were not too clued up about.
Well, I guess the state of the country from the point of view of unhappiness is what perhaps is creating this kind of situation. I mean, the people that we've been speaking to are basically saying what they are more worried about is getting the country fixed. They've been mentioning some of the tangible examples of things that are not working. I think one of the people who spoke to from Mpumalanga was saying, look at Transnet, look at load shedding, look at the potholes. So speaking about things that he personally feels are things that can be easily fixed. And then he asks the question, why are they not fixed? And then he says, maybe it's time for me to change my vote. And the other one said, I just decided to switch parties a month ago because I feel where I've been for the last 30 years, it's not working out. Maybe let me try something else. I don't know whether this is a silent revolution, as you are saying, but something is happening. The profile of the supporters here is something that has actually surprised me a bit. I knew that there would be individuals, black people, who time and again do support the Freedom Front Plus, but I think the increased numbers that I'm seeing here, so it makes for a quite interesting raid.
It certainly does, because also we purposely set out to speak to the people here because we wanted to hear, is this a renter crowd? But surprisingly, these are people who are able to articulate very confidently their reasons for supporting the Freedom Front Plus.
Sakina, and I think we all are surprised because if you think of the constituency of the Freedom Front Plus, they have a very narrow constituency. They know their people. They know the people who actually vote for them come election time. But I think we've reached a point in our politics in South Africa where the word "gatval" is used very often. People are tired. People are exhausted of all the fake promises by the bigger parties, whether it's the ANC, whether it's the DA, whether it's EFF EFF and the other players, I think that's why people are looking at the smaller parties. Maybe the smaller parties can do something. And if you look at the trajectory of the Freedom Front and the Freedom Front Plus and the history of the party, obviously they came, parts of it came from the National Party pre-1994, and then the Conservative Party elements joined in 2003. So these guys, the Conservative Party was in government. It was the official opposition to the National Party, after the September 1989 general elections. Obviously, that was still an all-white parliament. So these guys have that expertise. They've got that experience in government, in national government. So these guys know what to do and when to do. And Sakina, I take you back to 2010. At that time, there was this allegation by the Minister of Culture, the late Sicelo Shiseka, as well as the Deputy Minister, Yunus Karim, who said that we have a total of 280 mainly white ratepayer organizations who are intentionally withholding their rates and taxes, and they sorting out their own service delivery issues in their towns, in their cities, wherever they are. And these guys were actually accused of running a parallel government to the South African government at local level. So that in itself will tell you a hell of a lot. So I think the voter sentiment has shifted. You look back at 2010, this is 2024, nothing much has been done. And that's why we saw that upsurge 2016, 2021, 320,000 more votes for the Freedom Front Plus, a huge increase, 70% in terms of seat numbers, 221 for the Freedom Front Plus, because people know that, maybe if I lend my vote, not necessarily give my vote, if I lend my vote to a smaller party like the Freedom Front Plus, they possibly have experience how to run government, especially government at the very basic level, at local level, maybe something can be effected, that change can be effected. And it comes back to that point where I said, people are just cut full. They've had enough. They want to see change. They don't want to see dirt. They don't want to see, running sewage on their streets. They want that change to happen, and they want that change to happen like yesterday. So I think people are absolutely tired, and that's the reason we are seeing the change in voter sentiment. And I think come May 29, these elections, I think there will be changes, especially for the Freedom Front Plus. I think that upward trajectory will increase. Parties like the bigger ones, like the ANC and EFF, as well as the DA, will suffer in support. Yeah.
And of course, if you think about the African National Congress, who have enjoyed the majority of rural support, and again, just in speaking to people and finding out where they come from, quite a few of them coming from smaller town, edging more towards the rural areas of the country. Is that something that perhaps other parties should be concerned about, especially those who have not been paying attention to the rural constituency, because they've accepted that the ANC has that one pat?
I think what people are doing now, more than perhaps the sentiment, it's looking at the issues in your area. You are being informed about what is happening in your area. So is the state of affairs where I live the right one? Am I comfortable with it? You have just spoken about the small, the dorpies. So people come from those dorpies. So do the lights work there? Do they have water there? So it's those issues that are informing some of the people in terms of how to vote. Because when all is said and done, it's about how you survive, how you feed your family, how you live comfortably in a safe environment. If you feel that somehow is missing, you are going to look to someone who you think has a capacity and is able to do that. I think a party like Freedom Front Plus is very strong in terms of speaking out against crime. So that may resonate. You may not necessarily be ideologically inclined, but when they tell you that once we get in, we do away with crime, you'll start to take note. That's what Doc said.
Yeah.
You may end up lending your vote, not necessarily joining them, but you may lend the vote.
Because I would imagine that the ideological differences may still be stark, but it is the bread and butter issues that ultimately might just sway the day. But I want to go back to the 2019 manifesto. First, the top of the agenda for the Freedom Front Plus was, of course, the land question of no expropriation without compensation. So let's talk to that and, their sentiments, how they expressed it back then.
No, absolutely, Sakina. If you look at their 2019 election manifesto, they identified 5 focus areas. Top of that list was obviously the fight back against expropriation without compensation. Obviously, like I said earlier, they know the constituency, so they want to protect the rights of that constituency. We know what happened before 1994. Lots of South African land, around 80% of the land, is still sitting in white hands. And what they are saying is that we don't oppose that, but what we are saying that we must be compensated. Our constituents need to be compensated for that. And I think the timing for the Freedom Front Plus before the 2019 general elections was very well timed, was very opportune actually, and that actually worked against the DA, whom the potential voters of the DA saw the DA moving more towards the left, and they kind of identified with the Freedom Front Plus, especially on this land issue. And I think that was the tragedy of the 2019 election. You look at what happened 5 years back, there were 2 parties that actually benefited the most. It was the EFF that won 19 seats extra, and then the second one was the the Freedom Front Plus. So these 2 parties are diametrically opposed to each other in terms of ideology. Then that will also make you question, did something major happen in that election where we have 2 parties benefiting the most who are total on the opposite sides of the ideological spectrum? So like you said earlier, something is shifting.
Becoming more polarized as a nation, but very interesting observation there. They also, to that point of the land question, were very, forthright in stating that it's about ownership and protecting everybody's right to private property ownership. But also, I thought, which was interesting, was they made very clearly the point that what they wanted to dispel was the myth that all white people stole the land. It was an important marker for them.
Certainly, and I think they would always, come out and really stress that point to say, as some of us generationally, there's nothing we can do. So we are here, so we have to live here. But the fact of the matter is that as we are here, as we are part and parcel of the South African body politic, we have to make the country work. So clearly, from what the doc has said in terms of properties and who owns what, so it's very much closer to the heart for them, because if you were to go for the expropriation without compensation, who is the biggest loser in that one? So that will be the ones. They will be the ones who will lose the most. So they would always be very clear and guarded when it comes to those matters. But I guess on others like crime, like service delivery, so they would tend to resonate with the majority of South Africans. In fact, as we were speaking earlier, we remembered that at some point to be the mayor used to be a part-time job. And what does that tell you, Sakina? It basically tells you that so whoever got elected into the mayor, it was more about service than the employment. In fact, interestingly, the leader of this party used to be the mayor. I think the mayor of a small town in Northwest, Stelfontein.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point I had a discussion with him. He was saying, so because he felt he needed to do service to his community. So if then they get elected, they hope to bring that ethos of giving service to the ordinary people.
And we are going to leave it there for now, here from Heartfelt Arena at the Freedom Front Plus's manifesto launch. Still more to unpack, as Mzwai said, on issues like crime, on the issues like joblessness. There may be greater resonance with what the manifesto of the Freedom Front says. But then, of course, there's something like affirmative action, black economic empowerment, and how they see those particular policies at the moment. But of course, we did indicate that we spoke to some of the people attending today's manifesto launch, and actually took a video of one of the people we were speaking to. So we're going to play that for you, and it's back to Criselda in studio.
We are a generation of today. We want FF Plus represent you. Yes. When you watch it, when you listen to them, when you read their manifestos from previous years. We are fine with the only thing that makes us to be here. We want to see the ANC to be unseated. We no longer want to be served under the regime of the ANC. ANC is no longer doing its job. So you think the Freedom Front Plus is the vehicle to help you do that? It's on its way to do that. And remember, it's on the top 5 of the political parties in South Africa. Yeah. So it shows that it's growing and it's crossing over to the blacks also. So you are also against the expropriation of land without compensation? Those are national policies. So I follow the mandate of my party. I can't want land to be expropriated without compensation. Let's work together. Let's find a way or maybe a mechanism that we can use to find a common solution to this. Remember, we have that land issue there in KwaZulu-Natal. So why is it that it favors only the cadres of the ANC only to protect that land?